This is Studio 809 Podcasts, informing, connecting, and empowering the residents of the Pikes Peak region.
Binlow Season 2 is sponsored by Blackpackers, economic equity in outdoor education and recreation.
This is badly needed and long overdue, a controversial podcast about Colorado Springs. It's controversial because it makes sense. I'm your host, Nick Raven. I'm coming to you live the day after the big No Kings 2 protest, and I am worn out, and I am sunburnt, and my allergies are off the scale. But what an incredible get-together of between 12, 15,000 people, maybe more, especially as we were walking up and down the streets of downtown. Just absolutely nuts, the number of people who got together to celebrate this. Basically, to celebrate the idea that we are not under a dictatorship, we are not run by a king, and that we control everything still. As a democracy, we are a republic and we're a democracy. We are both of these things. There's not one or the other. So, very excited about yesterday. Very energizing. Very energizing. And to see America Beautiful Park utilized in that way, like Juneteenth, when Juneteenth is down there. No words, really. Just so many superlatives. On today's show, we have candidate for Colorado State Treasurer, John Mikos. Now, if this is a familiar name to you, he's been in and around, but he was the former chair of the El Paso County Dems. You may have experienced his work, heard from his work. He's been in and around doing stuff around politics and that. And so if you're looking for any spilled tea or any of that in that regard, you're not going to find it here. We don't talk about that at all. Instead, we're talking about what the heck does a Colorado State Treasurer do? Like, what does the Treasury do? Because I honestly didn't even know going into this what that was. And so he explained it, and he also explained what the office could enable in the future, like public banks. And that's amazing. Public banks are just an incredible idea among so many other progressive ideas that he has. And so it was exciting to talk to someone who's so knowledgeable about that stuff. I mean, he teaches it. He teaches economics, right? The idea that it's someone who actually knows what they're talking about versus someone who's just relying on rhetoric, which, you know, a lot of us do sometimes. It really solidifies why we vote for these people or why these people should be voted into these positions to begin with. It's a great interview. It's a little dry, you know, because it's money. It's talking about moving money, channeling it around, all that stuff, and how Colorado holds and then disperses that money and how it best utilizes it. We really get into it. We talk about the state treasurer, TABOR, all kinds of other stuff. It's a brief interview. He had places to be, but I'm glad that I had that time with him. So,
hey all, this is Nick in the editing bay. I just wanted to drop a little note here, and I completely forgot about it, even though I had it listed on my little post-it note to talk about. But I did work and continue to do work with John Mikos regarding website and design. That Tri-Bar logo is something that I worked with him to create. So we've been working professionally there. It's been pretty dope. I also mentioned the Colorado Springs City Hall. I don't know why I do that. I'm standing out in the middle of a field using what's rattling around in my brain to make these discussions, but I'm talking about Colorado Springs City Council. So when you hear that, just ring a bell inside your head and you'll know that I'm talking about what I'm actually talking about. Okay, let's get out of here.
Let's go ahead and get to that interview. On the other side, we're going to talk about this past week's resolution by City Hall, Colorado Springs City Hall, in regards to a National Day of Remembrance for Charlie Kirk. I'm going to soapbox about that on the back end. So stick around. But first, let's pay the bills. We're going to go talk to John. How's that sound?
The Nth Review. Do you like video games? What about multi-hour deep dives into how video games work? Of course you do. It's time you come check out what 22,000 other subscribers have already discovered. A whole bunch of delicious content about mechanics, immersive sims, action games, open world stuff, and why we play and enjoy games in video essays you can cook dinner to. Check it out at youtube.com/nthreview. And be sure to check out my newest review for Deus Ex Mankind Divided, a revisit of the classic immersive sim, coming out soon. If you'd like to place an ad on Binlo, send an email to badlyneededpodcast@gmail.com and get your business, campaign, or message prominently featured on this beautiful, glittering podcast. Now, onto the conversation. John Mikos, welcome to the show. How are you, buddy?
I am doing all right, Nick.
Yeah? You've been staying busy.
I have been busy. Yeah, absolutely. I'm doing a lot of stuff, and most particularly, I'm running for a statewide office right now, which is taking a good bit of my time.
Yeah, the state's pretty big. I didn't realize I don't know how I found this information, John, but it's actually 18 miles narrower at the north end than the south end because of the globe. That's right. How you can tell people that it's not a flat Earth.
That's right. I've heard that as well. That Colorado is not actually a rectangle, strictly speaking. That it has just literally more than 100 different sides to it.
I've heard 635.
Okay, your number's probably accurate, right?
Because of survey mistakes and stuff like that.
Yeah, because of survey mistakes and these sorts of things. I don't know the history well enough, but it looks like a rectangle to me.
Yeah.
But I guess up close, it's really not.
It's kind of a quadrilateral. Now, when you're running for office, I guess if you win, do they just tell you this stuff? Like, it seems because you're running for state treasurer.
Yeah.
And it seems like you would need to have some sort of precise controls over how many sides Colorado has. But then, first off, what in the world is a state treasurer?
That's a great question. Yeah, that's a great question. So that's exactly right, Nick. I'm running for Colorado state treasurer. Mm-hmm. That election is in November of 2026.
So another year.
So more than another year. So I'm starting early.
Yeah. So how has that been? I mean, I want you to explain, but how has it been to start so early? Like, do you need that kind of swell?
Well, I felt I needed that kind of time to get around the state, to get to know people,
right?
To get to listen to their concerns and their thoughts, to help to shape, the policies and programs that I'm running on, to give people an opportunity to get to know me.
Yeah. Because who's John Mikos? Who's this dude?
That's exactly right.
Would I have a beer with this dude?
That's right. Is that?
Do you have a favorite beer?
I have many favorite beers. Let's
leave
it at that. Yeah. Okay. So, but you asked the question, what does the Colorado State Treasurer do? So the Colorado State Treasurer is a statewide elected constitutional officer, serves for a 4-year term. It's term limited to 2 terms only. Our current incumbent is term limited, so it's an open seat. That's right. Treasurer Dave Young is a fantastic state treasurer, and Dave Young is term limited, so I'm running for that seat. So what does the treasurer do? That was your question. So a couple of things. Principally, the treasurer is responsible for making investments on behalf of the state. Investments. And that's a little different than what the legislature does in terms of appropriating funds. And let me just take a moment and kind of explain that in the simplest terms I can. So we have revenue that's coming into the state through sales taxes, through income taxes, through fees.
Property taxes.
Well, the state, there's no state property tax, but there's local property taxes. And as that revenue comes into the state, it's all been designated by the state legislature in the budget as to where it's going to go.
Yeah, not the corrupt politicians' pockets, right?
Right, exactly.
Right. Yes.
Exactly. So, it's to pay for schools, it's to pay for roads. But there's an in-between time from when the revenue comes in to when we have to actually pay a bill, pay salaries, pay rent, pay for some expense. So in that in-between time, the state treasurer's job is to put those funds to good use so they don't become what's called idle funds.
Okay.
It's like anything. If a person, an individual, has some extra cash lying around, they know they have bills they have to pay, they may make a short-term investment, buy a CD or something like that.
I was just saying,
in order to
not
get,
me, but
in
yes.
order to get, well, in order to get, at some point in your life, it will likely be when you'll have something that you want to invest near term, but that's not a small amount of money. At any given,
that's like billions of dollars, right?
It is. On average, it varies in the course of the year, but on average, it's about $17 billion.
That just sits. That could potentially just sit there.
Potentially sit there. Now, so the state treasurer is responsible for putting that to some kind of good use. Now, it has to be done in a way that makes sure that it's secure, that it's liquid, because it has to be available to pay for the commitments that have been made.
Right. But you don't want it to disappear before it actually.
Right. Or you don't want it to become tied up so that you can't sort of make payroll.
Right.
So forecasting the cash position, when are cash going to be due?
Yeah.
When do we have payments that we have to make outside as a state? That comes into what the state treasurer does. Of course, there's a professional staff there that manages the day-to-day of that. And the state treasurer's responsibility is to really give the overarching guidance and the strategy and the priorities around that. So that's a principal thing that the state treasurer does, is manages those available funds.
To make sure that they don't disappear.
That's right.
So where does the money go? Like, are we investing in corporations?
Great question.
Good.
Great question.
Glad I could set you up for that.
And I wanted to. So, so the Colorado Constitution places certain limits on the things that it can be invested in. Basically, it cannot be invested in any kind of a private company stock. So Colorado can't go out and buy stock in a Fortune 500 company. It can't be what's called a general obligation note. There's some other restrictions. So effectively, most of these funds get invested in bonds.
Okay. For like a very specific period of time.
I mean, the bonds, because bonds are tradable, the term of the bond could be a longer time, but because they can be sold at any given time, they're fairly liquid.
Okay.
And your question gets exactly to why I'm running. So we, in Colorado, by and large, although there's been some change in the past, couple of terms, we're investing in a lot of corporate bonds on Wall Street, big companies, Fortune 500 companies. So all of this investment is effectively leaving the state. And we're getting a yield on it, which is fine. But I'm a believer in what's called impact investing.
Okay.
And impact investing is not just investing for the yield, but also investing for the yield, but then what other positive impacts it could have. Let me give you a simple example.
So not Teslas and Cybertrucks.
Exactly.
Okay.
Instead of buying stock in, we wouldn't buy a bond from Tesla.
Sure.
Or a corporate bond from Wall Street.
Yeah.
Or
an index,
or a government bond, something like that.
Yeah. Treasury.
Yeah. Treasury security.
Yeah.
Exactly. What if we invested in a bond that was issued by a local housing authority here in Colorado?
To like build homes and stuff
build
like
affordable housing, right? We would still get a yield from that bond, but we would also get the added benefit that we've helped to finance affordable housing in Colorado.
And make changes and stuff like that.
And use that to make a positive impact on the lives of Coloradans. So what I'm saying is that instead of sending those investments out of state, we look for opportunities to invest them in state in ways that have positive impacts on the lives of people. That could be things like affordable housing, as I've mentioned, sustainable water projects, transportation infrastructure. There are all kinds of local investments that we could use.
Now, does that make them less liquid because they're very niche? These are hyper-local causes and stuff like that.
It means
this is all fun, like finance talk.
It is. It means that we have to work a little harder. Yes.
So there's a balance there.
Right. But Colorado is a big state with a very diverse economy.
I've heard that.
And I'm bullish on Colorado. And I believe that we can responsibly invest here. So you're right. The general principle of not putting all of our eggs in one basket still applies. But Colorado is a big enough state that we can make investments here in Colorado.
So it's like bonds stuff, like stuff that's been maturing for like how long, like what's the oldest whiskey in the bond shed right now? As
I off the top of my head, I don't know, but I'm sure there are.
We have to pay for the highways and that. Let's pull out this 30-year thing in Legos or something.
Right. There are all kinds of strategies around, investing in these kinds of things. There's what's called a laddering technique, where you're purchasing bonds that may be long term, but you don't have all of it in the same long term. So you're getting the yield of a longer term bond. But at any given month, some of it becomes due. I mean, some of it becomes available.
Yeah.
So you're able to then basically ladder and buy longer term bonds with the proceeds that came from the bonds that were just sold.
Now, are bonds guaranteed? Like insurance, are they guaranteed a return?
There is a return that's agreed upon. There's always risk at any point. So we have to focus on, things that are very high, very secure, that have good ratings, that are what's called investment grade. And I'll tell you, Nick, there's a misconception out there. And I think it's actually propagated by a lot of Wall Street financiers. That somehow the safest place to put your money is Wall Street.
Of course, right.
That's what they want you to believe. That's what they want you to believe. But what happens is, particularly with like Wall Street banks, they're taking our funds and they're investing in out-of-state, very risky, out of country, very specialized derivative products.
Yeah.
So when we're making these kinds of investments, they're not necessarily any safer than housing is here in Colorado. There are people here. They're going to continue to need houses. Those kinds of things have proven to be good long-term investments. So I truly believe that it's a little bit it's a little bit of something that Wall Street tries to put. Don't invest locally. You're safer to put your money on Wall Street bonds.
Does that work with like are there governments in say Texas or some that are like, yeah, we're going to go all in on Cybertrucks or Wall Street investments and risky stuff and whatever tech new thing that's coming at pets.com? Have you seen, in your experience, governments that are turning their money over to just really risky positions? And it's like, we can't afford lights anymore.
It certainly has happened. It hasn't happened in a long time at the state level.
At least not here.
Yeah. Not in Colorado, at least in recent memory. There are often some local governments, because counties and municipalities also have treasurers and these type of things. And there have been some cases where at the local municipal level, but by and large, there are enough safeguards at the state level to prevent, any kind of, so people are pretty safe. And basically investments in Colorado are with high grade investment quality bonds and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
There's another aspect that I like to talk about as in addition to these investments.
Right.
The treasurer also establishes what's called banking relationships.
Okay.
So
like regulation.
Well, not regulating the banks. That's a different part of the government. It's under the in Colorado. It's under the Department of Local Affairs. There's a finance authority, but the treasurer establishes banking relationships on behalf of the state.
Okay. The liaison, basically.
Yeah. Well, where are we basically opening up bank accounts, right? Because as the money comes in, before it's invested, it needs to go into an account.
There's a double buffer.
Yeah, there is. Well, the Treasury is not actually a big safe.
Vault. I was going to say, like,
there is a vault,
spinning vault door.
There is a vault with some property stuff in it, some assets that are under the custodial care of the state. But by and large, the Treasury are the various bank accounts.
Scrooge McDuck with his giant vault of coins.
Where the treasurer sits.
Yeah, okay.
So, and this is something that I really want to take on.
Okay.
So right now, we have billions of dollars in Colorado deposited in large Wall Street banks.
Okay.
Now, these banks are not primarily focused on their local communities.
They're just give us money, we'll do something with it.
They're focused on Wall Street banks are focused on risky out-of-state investments to maximize their own corporate profits. But there is a better way. I propose that instead of banking with these large Wall Street banks, that we use our community banks here in Colorado and our nonprofit credit unions, and we deposit our funds in those institutions. Okay? Because we know that those local community level banks, those what are called community development finance institutions, and those nonprofit business credit unions are making more local loans as a proportion of their portfolio than the large Wall Street banks. They're investing in things like someone's first mortgage. They're investing in things like small business loans. They're tied into programs that the state already runs, which I think should be expanded to provide things like targeted small business loans in communities that have been historically disadvantaged. So if we use those dollars and leverage them with these more local community banks, we're getting those working dollars here in Colorado for working people to advance that life. So that's a big part of my strategy. And ideally, I'd like to even take it one step further.
Okay. Yeah, because I was going to tangentially, go ahead.
I'm a proponent of something called public banking.
There we go. That's what I'm talking about. Right.
Now, what is a public bank? A public bank is a bank that's owned by the people.
The people are the members.
The people own the bank through their representative government. Exactly. Okay, so the bank's purpose is not to maximize profit. The bank's purpose is to maximize the public good.
Yeah.
Okay. So if instead of putting our investments and putting our deposits in corporate bonds on Wall Street and big Wall Street banks, what if we deposited those funds in a public bank here in Colorado, a state bank that was owned by the people through their government? And those funds then were used in conjunction with these community level banks, with these nonprofit credit unions, in order to advance things like local financing for affordable housing, small business loans focused on particularly economically disadvantaged parts of our state.
Economic diversity.
Exactly. It's about access to capital. It's about economic security. It's about broadening and lifting all boats. When we send this money off to Wall Street, it doesn't, yes, we get a return on it, but it doesn't do us any good outside of that.
Right.
It doesn't have that greater impact. And it's that greater impact that I'm after as the next Colorado state treasurer.
Now, you're talking about a statewide bank, but what would be, say, take it a step further, city banks, municipal bank. Now, you're talking about existing ones, but it's like, what if the city of Colorado Springs was like, we're going to start a city bank that is owned by the people of Colorado Springs and that? Is there a framework for that? Would you be able to then push for something like that so that then, because you say that and it's like, that sounds amazing, but then I think, oh, wait, here's these rural kids and adults, I guess, too, who are like, I'm putting my money in the Colorado bank and it's going to Boulder. It's going to the liberal cities of the Front Range to pay for their rail thing, as opposed to helping us out with, bonds for rural hospitals, especially in the wake of the big bullshit bill, and all that.
Yeah.
So how do you drill down further, or how do you present it in a way that's like, people of Durango or Fort Morgan or something, we're going to have this, but it's also going to be for you?
Yeah, a couple of ways to cut that. First of all, we're all in this together.
Yeah.
Okay. And so whether you're on the Front Range, on the Eastern Plains, on the Western Slope, in an urban or suburban or rural community, we need to be working and thinking not us versus them, but how do we lift all boats across our entire state? So a Public Bank of Colorado's mandate would be a broad mandate. It would also be run by professionals. Okay. The elected officials would set broad policy guidance, but there would be a separation so that it's professionally managed. We don't want to be using for any one individual or one group's political advantage. It needs to be used for the common good.
Yeah.
Now, with respect to counties or cities, it would be, in my view, very possible for a city or a county to also set up their own public bank. And if they wanted to do that, I believe they should. However,
it makes sense.
It does make sense. However, there may be some administrative advantages, some economic advantages, some cost advantages,
economies of scale,
by doing this in partnership. Now, it would need to be done in a way where the citizens of, let's say, Colorado Springs understood that the public funds that they were depositing into this public bank and that there were rules in place to make sure that a proportional share of that comes back in the forms of lending to support Colorado Springs or any other city in that case. So those types of arrangements could be done. And Nick, it's a bold idea, but it's not a new idea. These public banks have been around. And they were
since the times of Aristotle and Plato.
I don't know about that far back, but they have been around, and they were a big part of the progressive era 100 years ago.
Right.
And they were basically, the big banks came into the states and convinced them to get rid of these things. But there actually still is one public bank statewide that still exists in the United States, and that is in the state of North Dakota.
Of all places.
Okay. Right. You might be surprised. And it came out of, because those farmers in North Dakota, they don't trust Wall Street bankers.
Okay.
And they don't want their state funds leaving the state. They want their funds reinvested in their communities. The State Bank of Colorado has exceeded return on investment over average banks across the country for 100 years. It has been remarkably stable. It has also been a great tool that the state has to put money in areas and make strategic investments when there's a recessionary era. In the 2008-2009 timeframe, when we had the real estate bust.
And it was all tied up in Wall Street.
It was all tied up in Wall Street. North Dakota came out very well because they were able to refinance the loans of their people in North Dakota using the public bank. You may remember there was a big bailout of Wall Street banks.
TARP.
All that TARP funding.
Yeah.
Which very little of it so-called trickled down to actually real people.
Right.
And a lot of people went underwater and are hurting, and many still hurting of the effects of that 2008 recession.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Well, because they had local funding mechanisms, North Dakota was actually able to weather that much better than most states.
So what about Colorado? Like, where are we at now? Obviously, now that makes the assumption that, like, hey, Young's been a good guy for 8 years.
He's been a great guy for 8 years.
So what has he been doing to kind of lay down this ground? Because you would be following in that, and obviously he's been tied to the Polis administration.
Yeah.
And that.
And I don't want to get into what others have or haven't done. All very good people advancing very good state.
Sure.
We are where we are today. Mm-hmm. There are sound legal opinions that indicate that there's no constitutional prohibition from us establishing a public bank
from doing what we want
Colorado.
to do. Right.
Now, it would require some statutory authorizations. Mm-hmm. So we'd have to work with the legislature to put these kinds of things in place.
Yeah.
But I think that there should be a certain guiding principles of any legislation. Mm-hmm. First of all, it should be a go slow approach. I'm not suggesting that we would tomorrow change our entire banking and investment strategy. We would start small and grow. Mm-hmm. We would also, start a public banking facility and start to exercise that motion.
Yeah, because the state wants me to pull all my bank money out and put it in their bank where they're going to spend it on not fixing my potholes.
Well, we're not talking about money that's been appropriated. And, and anything what it's appropriated is appropriated. Yeah. We're talking about that revolving cash that's basically in between.
Yeah.
But at any given point, some of it's always in between. There's always billions and billions of dollars that are in between. That's the difference between an appropriation and a financing. Okay, in financing, you're using that revolving capital to put that working capital to work using some mechanism. It gets involved in lending money. And by lending money, you're looking for a return. You've got to follow good principles like security and liquidity and yield. And you don't want to put all eggs in one basket.
John, why is money so fucking complicated?
Well,
just like, oh my God, like, here's dollar, let's go.
Yeah, well, it is. I mean, we live in a complex world,
that's why there are positions where you run and it's like, I will best manage all this stuff.
Yeah. It's not a little bit wonky. It's a lot wonky.
Yeah.
So I get that, but back to how would we do this in Colorado? So first guiding principle is I think we'd go very slow. We wouldn't start to do anything overnight radical. We'd set up a public bank, start to deposit some portion of our available portfolios into that public bank, and then likely work through a network of our nonprofit credit unions and our community banks. It might, for instance, be something like this. Work with a local community bank that says, listen, if you community bank, because you have loan officers and that kind of thing,
right?
You sell those mortgages to first home buyers, and we'll buy some of them off of you and put the money back in the kitty. And that's a very simple example, but there already are structures in place to do these kinds of things. I want to make it clear that some of this is already going on, as you mentioned to previous officials. The state treasury buys bonds from the Colorado Housing and Finance Authority, which is a quasi-governmental organization that is turning around and making affordable programs, affordable loan programs available to people.
But you're talking more. Let's blow up the window on this so that more you can allow for more local.
Let's take that to the next level.
Okay.
Let's take it to the next level.
Yeah.
Those structures are in place. These housing authorities that can issue bonds are in place. Nonprofit credit unions are in place. Community development finance institutions are in place. The structure is there in our state. Some of the state resources are already working with these institutions. And what I'm suggesting is that we do more of that and less of sending our money away to deposit it in a Wall Street bank or to buy a Wall Street corporate bond, where it doesn't have the impact that it can have if we were to work locally. And yes, I know it's harder, Nick. I know it requires more, attention to managing these funds, but it's not a Herculean task. My own experience, if I can just share a little bit about that. So, what calls me to this is service. Service has been a big part of who I am. All four of my sisters are educators. My mother was a social worker who founded soup kitchens and a women's shelter. And I joined the Army to pay for college. Okay. And along the way, I earned an economics degree and an MBA in finance. And I retired from the Army after 20 years as a lieutenant colonel. And I started my second career working first for one of the big four consultancies. So I understand financial analysis and management. I taught economics at a graduate business school as an adjunct part-time. And I've been involved in helping big businesses improve their processes. So I do understand and have the skill sets to guide the professional staff at the Treasury to do this kind of thing.
Yeah, like it'd be cool if there was someone who actually knew what they were talking about and wasn't just like, I saw a bunch of Hassan streams online and now I think I got it.
Yeah.
I read some Wikipedia articles.
Yeah.
And now I think public banks, that sounds pretty dope.
Yeah.
So you have a background, and that also that's also kind of the same umbrella where you get the McKinseys, and because you mentioned Big Four, my dad was Ernst & Young for a bit there, and then they laid him off. That was great. Yeah. But there's also the other trend of that, you talk about Wall Street, of private equity and this dismantling of the American fabric on there. And I'm not saying that that's what you're doing, but it's that when you start getting into the numbers and the economics of stuff, that can be easily twisted to someone's own selfish purposes, or they can be used for the public good. And so money can do whatever you want it to do. It can be very powerful when there's enough of it, but it's having a wizard at the helm. What do they do? Do they do something evil with this money? Do they break down your favorite restaurant into ice cubes or something like that?
Right.
Did they send it to Wall Street? Do they send it, or do they do something publicly with that? And you're trying to be, I am the good wizard here that's coming in to, if you want to make that into a sticker, you can. That's free right now.
I'll try to do the best I can. But I'll tell you what I do believe. And, we can't, what's going on in the world right now, and what's going on at the federal level is, downright scary.
Yeah.
There's been an assault on investing in communities,
because that's communism.
Well, the government is, this big ugly bill is basically putting us into trillions and trillions of dollars of debt, really only to provide tax relief for billionaires.
Right.
And communities are going to be hurting. I guess all of that leads me to believe that at least my calling at this point in time for me is to act local.
Yeah.
I don't know that I can't solve all the problems of the world. I can do my part, but just because I can't solve all the problems of the world doesn't mean that I don't still have a responsibility to solve what I can.
To be part of the solution.
Exactly. And I do believe that we have to really look at how we can work on improving local economies. That's where we have to focus. I believe that the failure to focus in that way is contributing to, a widening gap between rich and poor.
Right.
It is stifling economic opportunity. It is leading people to feel really for the first time that their children won't have a better future than what they've had. At least the first time in our country in a very long time.
Yeah.
That's scary, and it shouldn't be that way. I am a proponent of entrepreneurship, but it needs to be focused locally, and it needs to be focused in a way where we're lifting all boats.
Yeah.
Elon Musk has gotten more than his fair share of government bailouts in the course of his career. We need to do things to focus on small businesses and helping young people and people who haven't had an opportunity to start their own business. It could even be home-based.
Yeah.
To do that kind of thing. Exactly. There are some great programs that are one in the state that was under the Treasurer's office. The Treasurer still plays a role in it. It's called the Climber Program.
Okay.
And it's one that's focused on using some of these revenues that are projected to come in and then applying them in the here and now to work with creating some loans and focusing them on people who are small and disadvantaged businesses.
Yeah.
Getting it really focused there. I've seen the power of that. And that is important across our entire state. And in terms of, you alluded a little bit to the sort of the rural-urban divide.
Yeah.
That kind of thing is especially important in the rural areas.
Yeah.
As I've had a chance to travel around our state and speak
and
with
you've been
people,
able to go a long way.
And I've been able to. What I'm hearing more and more, quite often, from people that are in rural towns is, hey, we need opportunities for our young people, if we're going to keep them here in this community, to start their own small businesses in this community. And to do that, that means we need programs around financial education, how to start your own small business, wraparound services, combined with affordable loan programs, startup loan programs.
Access to capital.
Access to capital to allow people, across our state to help realize their own dreams.
Yeah.
That's the way we're going to lift all boats.
So with that said, I want to take that and bring it local, because you say you get elected. We hope you do. Obviously, good friend. We're going to have an in. Yeah. Now we're going to have the Treasury party, whatever we're going to do. You bring in these programs, the state legislature agrees. We start getting this. You get home rules like Colorado Springs that go, no. And they vote 7-2 against, and they hold Colorado Springs back, or some of these other home rule regions and stuff like that are like, no, we don't, Westminster, whatever, that are like, no, we don't want that. So how do you then convince, because there is like that urban rural divide, right? But even ideologically, there is I don't trust the government, and I don't want the government to be more involved with what I'm doing, especially in my own backyard. My goodness, the state dictating what I should be doing, even if it's not literally that, but over winning the hearts and minds, even in a place like this. Like, how do you do that?
Well, a couple of points to maybe answer and clarify. So the state treasurer is only has responsibility, well, by and large, only has responsibilities for revenues that have come into the state coffers.
Right.
Okay, so that would not, so the programs that I've been talking about would not, necessarily, they wouldn't
have jurisdiction.
They wouldn't have jurisdiction over that. What I'm proposing, though, is that we would structure some of these programs in a way where if a county or a municipality wanted to opt into that, they certainly could. But I'm not proposing to
mandatory
yeah,
fund.
Although there may be opportunities to do things like provide technical assistance and to support communities that want to come up with their own public banking, community-focused banking approaches. And they don't want to deposit their funds in Wall Street banks either.
Right.
So there may be ways for the state to partner, but I'm not proposing anything that would alter whatever existing.
You're just providing the framework for if they want to do it.
Exactly.
Because my concern is, and there's been discussions, in going to the mayor town halls earlier this year,
right,
and stuff like that, is how do we grow and diversify our economy here?
Yeah.
Because everyone's like, it's cool if you're into defense. It's cool if you're into big tech firm or whatever. It's cool if you're in one of those cottage industries around that. But what if you're not and you want to be making more than $20 an hour here in Colorado Springs? And to have a public trust, a public bank, I want to use the right terminology there to say, like, we're going to distribute money so that we can start developing all these garage businesses. Because I see, like, even so many regions, even the Southeast or the middle of town, where it's like, man, wouldn't it be great if half this neighborhood of entrepreneurial minds who want to be able to do stuff, who want maybe not like an Etsy shop, but something adjacent to it, where they want to be able to, I do this really good, I want to make a business out of it, so I'm not working at Walmart or something like that, providing that infrastructure. But paradoxically, you have local politicians for the time being who are like, we don't want more government, even if you're not mandating it at the state level. You have people who are resistant to that. And in fact, we'll take more of that. Let's take the knife out and cut out what we already don't have to make it smaller. And so it's this conversation of, how do we get more money in here so that more people are able to do stuff, that the opportunity spreads out more? Because that's how you diversify the economy, is you allow more people to be able to fulfill their business dreams or create dreams at all, versus let's wait and see who we can lure in from out of state, big money from out of, because that's been kind of, it's like, let's lure this SATCOM company, let's lure this communication company, this fiber company.
With big tax credits. And
with big shields, their sales tax abatement and stuff the only way we're going to get business in here is if we give away the farm. And that's crap. It sucks.
The wrong approach. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so just to be clear, you're on to something there, first of all. What we're really talking about here, the treasurer, I just want to distinguish. The legislature appropriates, not the treasurer. So the legislature decides where the money goes. The treasurer just works on financing opportunities. How to use that working capital to loan it out. So we're not talking about giving money away, but what we're talking about is expanding the portfolio of affordable loan programs for housing, for small businesses.
Right. If they don't exist here, you can't give it to them. Right.
Or if it's hard to access that kind of capital.
Right.
If big banks are not interested in working with people around those kinds of things.
Right.
So we have to work very closely with nonprofit organizations who are doing financial education. We have to work with, I believe, where untapped resources are nonprofit credit unions who have a social and economic mandate as part of how they're constituted. Are banks that are designated as community development lending institutions. The programs like the Climber program. And even working, hopefully, under a different administration at some point with the Small Business Administration.
I don't want to knock the table. It's going to cause too much noise, but
But anyway, but it's partnering with all of those kinds of things to set up a wider and more robust portfolio of lending programs.
Your job isn't to create those nonprofits. Your job is to say, we are here if you exist.
Work with them to try to create opportunities for people.
Yes.
I believe also that And that is going to be, to come back to Colorado Springs, how we grow this economy here organically, okay, by growing more local small businesses who are hiring people, who are paying taxes, who are helping us to grow our local community. It's the inverse of going out and trying to attract some big company from out of state by giving them big tax abatements. Okay?
Yes.
It's a completely different approach. I believe in terms of winning that over, it is going to require working with community leaders as well across a diverse mix of communities. It's getting into at community level organizations to start to both expand these existing small business loan programs, but then also get them really targeted on communities that have been historically had a harder time getting access to these kinds of this
support.
Kind of capital.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Or communities that would benefit from more wraparound financial education, how to start a small business, mentorship programs around small businesses, those types of things. That's the way to grow our economy here in Colorado Springs.
Right.
It's not by giving big tax abatements to out-of-state companies in order for them to. That's a zero-sum game.
Right.
That's a zero-sum game.
Yeah.
That's, hey, we'll work to take 20 jobs from some other state
and
so we can put
over.
These 20 jobs here
in Colorado Springs
with less Springs.
And we're going to pay for them to move.
And we're going to subsidize that with our tax dollars.
Right.
Or our public funds.
Yeah.
You know, that's pitting one community against another community.
Yeah.
And those types of things are going to keep going.
Did you?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Thank you for Dave.
You've been slowly rolling out of your shop, so I need you to
Okay. Okay. Fantastic.
You got it?
Yeah, I don't know whether
Yeah.
rolling or leaning back.
Okay.
You are so passionate. You're like,
I know.
Nick,
Get me out
I'm
of
here
here.
to talk about state policy.
Yeah.
You can just pick it up after you said something brilliant about locally.
That was great, John. So, yeah, we have to do that, right? So you are going around the state and you're talking to, like, obviously, you've seen having coffee with the local parties around the state and stuff like that.
Sure.
Are you talking to those community, or it's just
I'm talking
everyone?
Wide and far. You know, I'm a Democrat, and in Colorado, we have a process where we qualify for the primary ballot through our caucus and assembly. So I'm working through the caucus and assembly to reach out to other folks who are, you know, planning to be part of that so that I can qualify for the primary ballot. I'm talking with people who have financial acumen. I'm talking to people who share progressive values that I share in terms of building communities. I don't pretend to know everything. I have a set of values that I think that I do bring to the table. I have some life experiences and some educational background that I hope to apply, but I'm also looking for good ideas and I'm looking for people to work with.
So when you talk to people who say don't have the financial, like certainly I'm no financial brain dude.
Yeah.
But like, what's the elevator pitch? Like, hey, I've got enough time to shake your hand. I'm John Mikos. I want to be your next treasurer.
Yeah.
Money, money, money. Like not to me specifically, but just money, money, period.
Right.
Like what's the elevator pitch?
The elevator pitch, you know, for whatever that term is worth is this. You know, listen, where we have an opportunity to make investments, you know, where we have available funds that are not yet needed to pay for a bill, and we need to start using that working capital, we should maximize the degree to which those funds are helping to support programs that work for people here in Colorado, with a primary focus of things around small business lending, affordable housing, sustainable water projects, and transportation infrastructure. We need to get that working capital that we have working here in Colorado for working people. That's the pitch.
You've got some competition.
That's the message. Yeah, yeah. Well, the competition is, there's a very large. We've seen a concentration of capital over the last 50 years. That I think has become almost frightening.
Sure. Yes.
So much capital is wrapped up in these few small banks, and that is their focus is not primarily community lending. And I know they're going to point out, they'll say, oh, look, we've done these community projects.
We funded a 5K.
They're there, right? Yeah. They're there. But their primary focus is not community banking. They're financiers who are using our public funds that we've deposited in their banks, and they're taking them around, and they're investing in risky financial derivatives and all of these kinds of things.
Yeah.
Okay. And they've become basically too big to fail.
Right.
So that when they do, get over their skis and they do take on so much risk.
Yeah.
That the government needs to come and bail them out, which tends to happen every 25 to 30 years.
Yeah,
that's not a
good cycle to be in.
That's not a good cycle. That's not a good business cycle.
No.
What I'm saying is, and listen, I'm not saying that large banks don't do good work in some cases.
Sure, sometimes.
I'm not saying that we get rid of that. But what I'm saying is that the balance has been lost. We are tipping too much of this concentration of capital in a few small centers that are not focused on local communities, that are not in touch with the needs of local communities. And I'm proposing within the purview of what I can change, which is not everything.
No, right.
But if elected as Colorado State Treasurer, I can have an impact working with the legislature, with other elected officials, to help drive those investments locally, to work with existing programs and perhaps create some new ones, to deposit these public funds in a way that we can work through getting them loaned out and putting them to work for people that will drive things like affordable housing, like small business loaning, like sustainable water projects.
Right.
We need to keep our funds here in Colorado. Act locally. As much as we're thinking globally about what, all of the craziness in the world, our response needs to be, what can we do here in our communities to help create a brighter future for everyone? And the responsibility of Colorado is everyone.
Yeah.
Rural, urban, suburban, Western Slope, Front Range, Eastern Plains, Northern Colorado, Central Colorado, Southern Colorado. We need to be in it together, not pitting communities against each other to try to get existing, jobs moved from point A to point B. But how do we grow at the most local level? It's tied closely to these ideas that it's not quite the same thing, but like micro lending. You may have heard, which is part of economic development. It's helping people to fish. It's letting people create their own dreams and their own aspirations, and then giving them some support. And part of that is economics. Part of that is finance. Part of that is making affordable small business lending possible for everyone in the community, not just the few. That's what I'm about. That's why I'm running for Colorado State Treasurer.
So with this role, and I don't quite know how this fits in there, how does TABOR restrict you?
TABOR. Let's talk about TABOR.
Let's talk about TABOR. I want to spend these last couple minutes here, and I got you.
Okay. So listen, one of the responsibilities of state treasurer is to report on the economic security and financial stability of the state. And I am committed to sounding the alarm whenever there is a threat to that economic security or financial stability.
When there's not enough stuff in the banks or wherever.
Right.
The bonds.
Well, it's even broader than that. Okay. Whenever there's a threat to our economic well-being. Mm-hmm. And right now that threat is TABOR. Mm-hmm. Okay. In the 30 or 40 years since its passage.
92, 93.
Okay. So 33, 34 years since its passage. TABOR has morphed into something unrecognizable. And
by design.
Yeah. And it's warping state finances. And quite frankly, it's become an excuse or a crutch for some of the wealthiest Coloradans simply not to pay their fair share. Mm-hmm. Now, TABOR is very complex. It actually has numerous provisions to it. It needs to be reformed piece by piece. I believe the right place to start is with a progressive income tax.
Okay.
One of the provisions of TABOR, and I'm talking state level here, is that our income tax level is a flat tax, which is effectively regressive. Yeah. Because a person of modest means is spending a larger proportion of their income on necessities.
Yeah.
Okay. So when we have a flat tax, like we have in Colorado, because TABOR mandates it, the burden falls disproportionately in terms of the economic well-being on people of modest means.
On working class.
Exactly.
Right.
On working class Coloradans. Mm-hmm. Whereas Coloradans whose source of wealth comes not from labor, but from capital, that incidence is hitting them much less. Mm-hmm. Okay. So to help equalize that, I believe we should have a progressive income tax. Mm-hmm. Higher earners should pay a higher proportion of their income to the state tax. Mm-hmm. Maybe we do fence some of that for public education or other purposes. If voters want to know that it's not just a blank check, but that it's going to be used for sufficient purposes.
Yeah.
But that is a provision of TABOR. It can't be just changed by the legislature. It's going to require a ballot measure, and it's going to require voters to put that in place. Now, how does someone like the state treasurer get involved? Mm-hmm. Well, the state treasurer can't just wave a magic wand and make the tax code change because it's
That's
the
not
provisions
your job.
in Treasury. Right.
Yeah.
It has to go to the Constitution. But I'm prepared to use the bully pulpit of the office
to say,
listen, this is not fair. It's not in the best interest of Colorado. And it's actually holding us back because we have, by some measures, almost $100 billion of met infrastructure needs across our street. Roads, transportation,
education,
water, infrastructure, education buildings.
Yes.
All of this is part of this unmet infrastructure. And we can barely keep the lights on.
Right.
And so what's happening when you defer maintenance year after year? What eventually happens is you go off a cliff.
Yes.
And it becomes too big to recover these roads, too big to recover these water projects, too big to recover. If we maintain the schools along the way, they'll simply last longer. It just doesn't make long-term financial economic sense to constrain ourselves this way. And I believe now is the right time to look towards a progressive income tax ballot measure. Because remember, who amongst us is getting the big cut from this big, bad, ugly bill?
It's the wealthy.
It's the wealthiest, right? And so I think the time is right.
It's the Anschutzes. It's the...
I'm not going to name names, okay?
I'll name names.
You can name names.
I got you, yes.
But I will say we know who they are.
Yes.
Okay? I will say that we're in this together.
Yeah.
Okay? And I think it's the right time for us to say to people, listen, the wealthiest Coloradans just got a huge tax break.
Yeah.
A huge tax break. Isn't it the right time, given that we have these unmet needs, given that we have this threat to our own economic security and our own financial stability, that we should ask the wealthiest among us to pay a little bit more now?
Could you, how many bands could you, theoretically with software, you could just take everyone's income and you could create a tax bracket for each individual person.
Yeah. Well, in the, even if we were to, I think there are 4 primary, in the federal tax, that broad. I'm not going to pretend that I know exactly what the right graduation
number of
is,
buckets.
Yeah. But I do know that, that these things, are well understood.
Mm-hmm.
They can be well modeled, and we can come up with a fair, progressive tax system. And actually, it may be one where by design that the lowest income earners get a tax break as a result.
Well, that's the way it should be.
That's
right.
exactly the way it should be.
That's the way it should be, yeah.
So as we graduate this, we start with those that are earning the least income paying the smallest proportion of their income.
Right.
And then we rise from there. We have this flat number. The least are paying, higher burden. The wealthiest, a higher income, a lesser burden. We need to flip that equation.
Yeah.
That's my thought.
John, thank you for coming on. Where, can we see you, or is there, this isn't coming out for a little bit still, but what's your site, where we can go?
My website's been up for a while. A couple of things you can do. If you'd like to check me out, learn more about me, go to www.johnmikos.com.
How you spell that?
That's JOHN MIKOS, JOHNMIKOS.com. I'm not on Twitter.
Good.
I may have an old account there, but I'm not using it. I am on Facebook, and I am on Instagram.
So if someone wants to ping you
follow
with
me there, please do. John Mikos for Colorado State Treasurer. If you'd like to sign up for my newsletter, like any candidate, I always welcome any kind of financial contribution. I'm running this on a shoestring.
Yes.
But I'll tell you, Nick, I'm having a lot of fun. I'm really enjoying this, getting around Colorado, talking to people. We have a beautiful state. We have wonderful people.
Audiobooks,
we have a bright future. Audiobooks, contact. I'll sign up for anything. I'm getting around, and I'm not hard to find. Actually, I'll give you my phone number. You can call me. Area code 719-645-2244.
Oh my gosh, listen, put that in your contacts right now. Put that in your
contacts list. I'm an early riser, but I do go to bed kind of early at night. So prefer calls either early evening or best time.
John, thank you
call me anytime.
Call John. Thank you.
Yeah.
We'll call you. I'll just text you, whatever it is.
Absolutely.
Thank you for being on Binlow.
Absolutely, Nick. Thank you so much for having me today.
All right, so just this past week, Colorado Springs City Council put forward a resolution recognizing National Day of Remembrance for Charlie Kirk, a conservative podcaster. This is an issue that really gobbled up a lot of my mental, emotional bandwidth this past week. Because the City Council, I talk with Council Member Gold next week, people don't think highly of the City Council, right? They are not thrilled with how City Council wastes its precious little energy and power on stupid things like this. And the thing is, we'll talk about Charlie Kirk, but the thing about Charlie Kirk is this may be the last time that I or so many other people will ever have to mention him. Like pretty much ever, and I'll explain why in a bit. The way this came about was very shady is one word, but definitely dishonest. And it was purely political. Like, recognizing Charlie Kirk was a purely political move to begin with, but the way that they did it here was absolutely political, because they brought it on. Half the council members didn't even know it was going to be on the agenda on the meeting that it happened. This was a meeting that was already going to be very full. It ran over 9 hours because of the debate over the net metering regarding solar customers with Colorado Springs Utilities. And that's a whole other ball of yarn. But it was going to be a long meeting, so they're like, well, let's just cram it in here early on. City Council will do these proclamations, these resolutions, to recognize people that were extremely powerful or influential. You had Martin Luther King, civil rights. You're going to recognize him as you're going to recognize his day, right? You're going to recognize veterans, firefighters, people who have worked as public servants and stuff like that. So what they did is they did this proclamation and hoped to scoot right through it. President Crow Iverson said, "We don't allow comment on these things." And then Nancy Councilmember Henjum snapped back and said, "Of course we freaking do." Like, of course you do. So they tried to get it in there. They tried to railroad it. This was brought to the table by Councilmember Brandy Williams, a conservative out of District 3, previously represented by Michelle Tallarico. It's a left-leaning district because of the way that the vote shook out. So we ended up with a conservative. And there are parts where, of course, I'm going to agree with her, but there are definitely parts where, like this, where she's like comparing Charlie Kirk to Martin Luther King. And it's like, the fuck are you talking about? So she read off the proclamation, and the fact that people were not going to be able to give comment on this, because proclamations like this go to a vote. The council has to vote on it. And it was very narrowly split. And the way that it shook out was that Brandy read off the thing, Councilmember Williams read off her proclamation and all her little fluffy, he was so great and so good for discourse, and he was so kind, and he reflected the kind of way that we should talk about politics here. Before basically they played a Turning Points USA propaganda video featuring Kirk and his accomplishments, and it was very, very whitewashy, literally, but with praise about this dude. It was gross. The fact that they played that in city council chambers was absolutely gross. So they played it, did that. Councilmember Donaldson, who recognized the pushback of people against this resolution publicly, he stood up, not literally, but he stood up and said, we shouldn't table this until we can have people talk about it. And because the reception that they got in calls and emails and that were overwhelmingly negative against city council taking on this thing, which is, again, one of those things where city council is not in step. It doesn't recognize the diversity of our community, right? So Donaldson put up a motion. Conservative Rainey also agreed with it, even though he agreed with Charlie Kirk's what he did. Again, we'll talk about that in a second. And they pushed for a resolution. First, second, they voted. It failed 4-5. And then they voted on the resolution itself. It passed 5-4. The same people voting for or against both sides. Councilmember Lineweber had expressed that some of the people who wrote in were expressing violent actions and deeds and thoughts and stuff like that. Like, I wish I had pulled the trigger and stuff like that. To which Donaldson replied, that's not, that was like a couple of them, right? That was not overwhelming. I want to say personally, as the host of Binlow, that kind of messaging is unacceptable. All right. Political violence is completely wrong, no matter who's doing it to whom. Okay. So saying, I wish I were the one who pulled the trigger on Charlie Kirk, eat shit. Fuck you. You're not a good person. That's not a good thought to have. All right. Not that it changed this vote, but clearly, like sending people death threats is no, you don't fucking do that. All right. I want to be 100% clear. And unfortunately, I have grown up and lived in a very toxic culture of gaming. Video gaming is very much like that, where people will send death threats to developers over, their favorite character getting nerfed, their stats being changed, the DLC not being good, the game not being very good. And it's like, we should kill those people. Are you fucking serious? Are you fucking serious? No. So whether it's this or it's Charlie Kirk, anything like that, political violence is not acceptable no matter what. So then we get to Charlie Kirk himself. So just bear in mind that I'd planned on speaking. I'd planned on going down to City Hall And speaking about this, I'd worked on it, and that's what was soaking up so much of my brain space for a while was I had written out 350 to 400 words, which is about how many you can get maximum out of 3 minutes, which didn't matter because they weren't allowing the public to speak on the resolution anyway. The thing is, I knew who Charlie Kirk was before his murder. I'm one of those terminally online bread tuber watching dudes who was like, oh, Charlie Kirk just actually a really bad person. Because conservatives hold him to a high regard. Like, he would sit there across from a college student and say, change my mind, kind of Steven Crowder style. Steven Crowder is the other conservative podcaster who had that table, who was like, change my mind, controversial opinion, change my mind. And so I knew who Charlie Kirk was. I knew the awful things he was. I knew the awful platform that he had developed to hate people as much as he did. Like, Charlie Kirk hated people. He really hated people. And he hated people of particular stripes. He hated minorities. He hated vulnerable people. He used slurs. He made, like, his dark humor was not humor in any humorous sense. It was punching down bullshit. This civil discourse that people believed, conservatives believed that he had because they align with his beliefs was not civil discourse. Charlie Kirk was not a dude who spoke to subject matter experts. He was not one who spoke to people with a position of intellectual or ideological authority. What he did was he went to college campuses and he wanted to speak to undergrads specifically because Charlie Kirk was a debate bro. A debate bro is this online YouTuber personality who basically memorizes a bunch of talking points and rebuttals to anyone's particular points, and they just kind of exhaust those, and when they exhaust those, what they do is they just get angrier and angrier about it because they're not interested in actual discourse. They're not interested in actually changing their minds. What they are interested in is batting down people. And so you have this incredibly attractive format where, yeah, go and argue with Charlie Kirk for 5 minutes or something like that, and you are not as rehearsed as this debate bro. So he will be slick. He will be very persuasive even if you hold diametrically opposed views. That's what Charlie Kirk did, is he made you feel unsettled because he was so confident in his talking points that it came across as authentic, or that his ideology was more mature or valuable than yours. And he would do this over and over and over again, campus to campus. He was interested in the sport of it, all right? Charlie Kirk was not interested in changing his mind. In fact, articles were kind of coming out after his death, after his murder, which again, I haven't even said it yet. Charlie Kirk's murder was completely unnecessary. Again, political violence is completely uncalled for. That Charlie Kirk had actually held more moderate views. He was still conservative, but he'd held more moderate views. And as Trump rose, as he began to make his money, like Charlie Kirk was a young dude. He was like 31 or something, young 30s. And he made his money. He built his platform on saying, memorizing, and debate broing his hate louder and more efficiently as he went. And the more hateful he got, the more attention he got, and also the more divisive he was. So people who did not like Charlie Kirk really did not like Charlie Kirk. People who liked Charlie Kirk really liked him because he was the one who was like holding down the anchor, he was holding the door, But as time went on, he became more extreme. So this idea that he was just like, I'm just, in fair sport, in good spirit, producing good faith debates, I am just challenging your ideas. That's not what he did. And the thing is, all you have to do is zoom in just slightly into what Charlie Kirk did, who he was, what his platform was. And you could see that. There was no civil debate. He just wanted to beat you down and make you look stupid. He was a master of knowing what he knew about hunkering down with what he understood. And unfortunately, because so many people align with those values of trans people shouldn't exist, black people are not deserving of any professional position ever. Like, you step away, you take Charlie Kirk and you watch his material where he's not even on that stage with these undergrads, where he's just on his podcast with, you know, his sycophantic co-host or whatever guest he has on. You listen to him there and it is completely disgusting. And that's where some of the worst stuff that he says comes from, is because he has no opposition. He's preaching to a choir. That's who Charlie Kirk was. All right. He was a modern Rush Limbaugh. He had the opportunity to change his mind. He was not interested in changing his mind. And so it goes that he was celebrated as a hero for the cause. He is a martyr. And that's basically how he is, because how he has wound up is he is a martyr. Conservatives are using, politicians are using Charlie Kirk as a bludgeon. They are using him as a tool to better enforce period, the things that they are for. There's legislators in Florida that are hoping to withhold funding for public schools if they don't rename streets after this dude. And the thing about Charlie Kirk, and that's why I mentioned that this may be the last time I ever mention his name, is that there's nothing to ever mention ever again. Like Rush Limbaugh, he is going to be completely forgotten. I mean, you may have seen the Google Trends chart where on his death it went spiked up and then it just kind of dribbled down to nothing, which was before, you know, people even know who he was, right? Because he had nothing to contribute. He didn't build anything except a platform of hate, and you can't build a platform of hate and have it long-term sustainable. Like fascism, it eats itself. It's like building a house on Tinder. It's like not the dating app, but the supplemental fire materials that you use to start a fire. You can't build a house on ash, and that's what Charlie Kirk did. He was the one who held it together because he was the mouthpiece, the loud proclaimer of his hatred. And now that he's gone, that will start to disappear, or his wife will step in, or someone else will step into that void, that vacuum of just absolutely just virile, just worst trash, the worst rhetoric, the most hateful ideology. That's the legacy of Charlie Kirk. He's gone. There's nothing left. You can't build on that. He will be forgotten except as a tool that these fascist authoritarians use to basically try to tamp down the opinions of others. You can't be pro-trans because Charlie Kirk's dead. You can't support black people because Charlie Kirk is dead. And they're going to use that as long as they can, forever. And that's sickening. And so when you have Colorado Springs City Council doing this proclamation, making this proclamation, and doing it without public input at all, they railroaded it through. It was a purely political move. It was purely dog whistling. Purely. We have to vote these people out. We have to vote these people out. Crow Iverson, Risley, Lineweber voted for it as well. We have to vote these guys out. We just have to. And those are the at-large. They're out in 2 years. We have to vote them out. And we have to stop resolutions like this from crossing our desk, because every resolution, every proclamation like this that gives weight and gravity to Charlie Kirk, it gives conservatives power to use him as a bludgeon. It gives light and weight to the claim that people are only recognizing him because he is useful to their cause. He was not good in and of himself. All right? It doesn't take much to see that he was so full of hate. And so with that, there's no more that we can say about it or do anything. Charlie, City Council has had their way. All we can do is vote them out. All we can do is voice our objections at every possible venue that we can. Keep tabs on the agenda as it comes up. And you know what? We have to continue to love our family, love our friends, love our city, and especially in times like these, free Palestine. All right, let's get out of here.
Badly Needed and Long Overdue is part of the Studio 809 Community Podcast Network. These interviews are recorded at Studio 809 in the Next Us, a professional cooperative environment for small businesses in downtown Colorado Springs. Be sure to check out all the other fine podcasts at studio809podcasts.com, where you can find your new favorite local podcast. This show is produced by myself and Dave Gardner, with video directed by Dave Gardner. Show music is by Injection Site Reaction. Thank you guys. I'd like to give a thank you to Catherine Chukas and Ken Schauer, and a special thank you to Kelly Karnetsky for helping fund this second season of Binlo on Indiegogo.